After uploading the video of the Islam conquest of Persia, we got to know the Parsis. These are ancient Persians that left Iran after the Muslims took over and moved to India. The Parsis have done a lot of great things in India, and if we want to explain all of them, it's gonna take a while. But in this video, we want to introduce you guys to the most famous Parsis. None other than Jamshedji Tata. You've probably heard of his last name, Tata Motors. Tata is the biggest industrial company in all of India. Of course, everybody knows Tata Motors, the biggest car manufacturer in India, and they also create buses and semi-trucks. But this is a very small part of the whole Tata company. Our story begins when India is in the British hands, and this ginormous peninsula is the most important section of the British Empire. And that was one of the main reasons the Indian people were suppressed and they were not allowed to do anything but the job they were assigned to. When we get to the year 1857 and the first revolutionary war happens in India, the complete control is not in the British hands anymore, and it's handed over to the British Raj. And this kind of means that the control is in Indian hands now rather than completely British. After this, regular people were allowed to change their job and become actual entrepreneurs. One of those men that was gonna become a new entrepreneur was Jamshedji Tata, a young man that has recently graduated from the English college called Elphinstone. Jamshed's father was an exporter, and he would sell different supplies from India to some countries around the world. When Jamshed realizes that his father exports different supplies to different countries, he decides to travel there to learn more about it, because he wanted his dad to make more money. When he visits the different companies that are buying his dad's product, he tries to make bigger deals with them to make bigger transactions happen. Not only does Jamshed find new customers for his father's business, but he also makes them more interested in buying his dad's product. He continues expanding his dad's business until the year 1874, and eventually he creates his own factory when he opens the first textile mill in India. Since Jamshed had traveled the world and he got to know what's better for his people, he put in rules that didn't make sense for the Indian people. Like, for example, he set a rule that one day a week you can take off and not work, something that hasn't happened in a very long time. Or another rule is that when you're sick, don't come to work, get better and come back. Back in the day, if you didn't go to work because you were sick, you were fired because you were replaced by someone else. You could say other entrepreneurs and businessmen weren't a fan of Jamshedji's new law because he was making them look bad. Jamshedji was not satisfied with the textile mill he had created. He wanted to bring the entire industrial revolution from America and Europe to India. When he goes to Germany, he gets to know the steel mill and he understands that there is such a factory, and he wants to bring a part of it to India. He was successful in the year 1901 and brought the steel mill in India. 2 years after this, he visits the Niagara Falls and he gets to know the technology of hydroelectric, where you make electricity with the flow of water. When he gets back home, he creates another factory that produces the parts for these pumps. While he was busy creating industry, he knew another way of making money is tourism. And that is why he created the most infamous hotel in all of India, the Taj Mahal India in Bombay. This is the most famous hotel in India to this day, and it's very iconic. Jamshed once again visits Germany, but on the way there he gets ill and dies. But it's not like the company was not in good hands. He had created such a strong foundation for the Tata company that it was going to take a lot for it to fall down. He had 2 sons that he trusted very well, and they had worked with him all his life, so the company was handed over to his 2 sons. The first thing these 2 brothers do is to put the Tata company under a trust. And when you do that, The next generations that take over cannot sell the company off anymore. It has to stay under the Tata family. They can continue growing it, but no selling it. These two brothers continue their dad's passion. They open the first cement factory in India. They create the first insurance company in India. They also create the first electricity companies. When the two brothers finally retire and they want to create a replacement, they don't choose their sons. The person they choose is named Jahangir Tata, which is one of their cousins. And of course, he had been working for them at a very young age, so they knew what type of an employee he was. Jahangir was a huge fan of aircrafts, and earlier that year, he had gotten his aircraft license from France. And that is why the first thing he did with the Tata company is create the new airline called Tata Airlines. This is also the first airliner in all of India. Let's continue moving forward, and we get to after World War II, when India finally gains its independence from Britain. You might think that this was good for the Tata company, but that wasn't the case, because the new government was applying a lot of new socialist laws, rules that are terrible for businesses, especially big businesses. Jawaharlal Nehru was the first Prime Minister of India, and when he realized how successful Tata Air is, he nationalized it and made it the state's property. A lot of people say this was because of the influence of the USSR. Jahangir wasn't gonna give up though, because he was the person that created Tata Motors after World War II. And 8 years later, he opened up another plant with Mercedes-Benz Daimler and started creating buses and trucks. When Jahangir was working, it was a hard time. He had accepted 14 different branches of companies under the Tata family, and after working in this company for 52 years, he had turned it to 95 different factories. And this is with all the socialist ideas trying to stop him, but the ideas that he had in his head wasn't gonna stop. When we get to 1969, Indira Gandhi becomes the new Prime Minister of India, and she's against the Tata ideology. So she decides to create a lot of monopoly rules that are very radical. So radical that it makes the US monopoly law seem fake. And after going back and forth with the government, he was about 70 years old. And he was trying to find a replacement to become the new chairman of Tata. It is interesting to know that every time a new replacement for the chairman of Tata that was chosen was someone that worked in the company for a very long time, and they knew what the vision of the company was. And that is why Jahangir didn't choose his son. He chooses another family member by the name of Ratan Tata, someone that worked with him closely for a very long time, and he knew what Jahangir's vision was with the company. Ratan continues working and growing the company until we get to 1991, when the Soviet Union collapses and the socialist ideology that was present in the Indian government was no longer around, and the country had pretty much turned into a free market country, and that means it's more capitalistic than socialist. The Tata company could now breathe, but from the other side, when you're in a free market, competition is king. So a lot of new competition is popping up around the Tata factory. It had been decades since the Tata factories had competition, but now they had plenty. But it's not like Ratan didn't know what he was doing. He took a completely different route than his predecessors. He realized if he wants to continue competing with the world, he needs to buy more companies from around the world. So he decides to buy different factories from all four corners of the world. Like one of the first companies he bought was the tea company called Tetley from Britain. He buys tens of different factories from all over the world, and it all had to do with the government. The biggest deal he makes is the Chorus Steel Company, and he bought it for $12 billion in the year 2007. The next year, he makes another great deal. He buys Land Rover and Jaguar for a price of $2 billion. Even though Ratan didn't actually grow the Tata brand itself, but he added so much value to the overall company that the most amount of growth Tata had experienced was under Ratan leadership. Around the 1990s, the evaluation of Tata was $6 billion, but in 2017, when he finally retired, the evaluation was more than $100 billion. It's not like he has $100 billion where he go buy his company with cash. Since he had the idea, he would get huge loans from different countries and different banks. In the year 2017, Ratan Tata was 80 years old, so it was time to find a replacement and announce him to the world. But for the first time, the replacement wasn't from the Tata family anymore. Ratan chose a very loyal member of the Tata group that had been working with him for over 30 years, and you could say he was very much trusted. His name is very hard too, Natarajan Chandrasekaran, the first non-Parsi leader of Tata. Ratan is still around and he's 85 years old. If you see the graph of Tata, it's always growing, and it has not slowed down since new leadership. Just like we said, Tata is under a trust, and that means nobody can sell it. So it basically means more than 51% of the company has to be in Tata family members' hands. All of the Tata companies put together is in the top 10 leaderboard of the biggest companies in Asia, and they're valued at more than $100 billion.